This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network.
Visit bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 51st ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle, besides the fact that I caught you off guard by starting the episode?
Yeah, you really did. But I'm great. Thanks for asking. Football's going to be on my TV this weekend, so that in itself is wonderful news.
What big games are this weekend? I forgot to look.
Florida and Miami
play
this weekend. I think Wyoming might play. I could be wrong about that. Research department? That was quick. Like 10 seconds in the episode, we're already confused. But other than that, life's great. How about you, Cameron?
I'm doing well for the most part. I actually got some bad news recently that Spider-Man is leaving the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I saw that. That's devastating.
I'm a big Spider-Man fan, big Marvel movies and comics fan, and the fact that Sony and Disney can't work together is really disappointing for the fans. But that is a topic for a completely different podcast that we do not host.
Well, at least you have, maybe 20 Spider-Man movies to hang your hat on?
Well, no.
Oh my gosh.
No, that is very sad. And, which is the Spider-Man with the Green Goblin?
Spider-Man 1, also Spider-Man 3, if you really want to get into it.
That's true.
New Goblin, also Amazing Spider-Man 2 with that freak show of a Green Goblin, if you want to get into that.
Okay,
so,
I don't really want to get into that, but I do really enjoy the first and second Spider-Man movies.
Yes, those are legitimately good movies, I would say. They're a little campy, a little nostalgia-driven if you rewatch them, but yeah, they were definitely really good at the time.
Wyoming's first game is against Missouri.
Well, I don't know why I thought of that, so forgive me.
Anyway, on this podcast, we talk about news, and we usually have a big topic to discuss. So our big topic this week is the Mizzou football schedule. We're going to preview it. We're going to go through each game, give our prediction for what we think is going to happen. But before we do that, we do have some news items. First up, it's bad news. Montra Edwards Jr., 1 week after we talked about him committing to Missouri, we now have to talk about him decommitting from Missouri.
Mantra, you're killing us, buddy.
Just when I fell in love with him, really.
Yeah, I know. Just when we were starting to get to know him. So he was committed for like 5 days. I think that it was very surprising to literally everyone when he committed to Missouri, including like his family, and so everybody was kind of thrown off by this. So definitely not surprised by him decommitting and wanted to just kind of step back and make sure he's making the right decision for himself. Missouri's still in the mix here, still might land him at some point. So I think he has rescheduled his commitment date for December.
Pushing it back quite a ways there.
Yes. He's really taking his time.
Well, we will keep tabs on him and see what ends up happening there. Next news item, we talked last week about the fact that Albert O was named to the CBS Sports first team All-American team, and that's cool, but what's even cooler is he's now been named to the Associated Press first team All-American team as the number 1 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, the honors keep pouring in for Albert O, which it's not super surprising considering the numbers he's put up. If anything surprises me, it's that there's just a little bit of uncertainty with his health, I think, right now. Him coming off a pretty serious shoulder injury that ended his season early last year, had surgery, haven't seen anything from him in, almost a year now. So we're a little unsure of maybe how impactful he's going to be this year. Hopefully he's as healthy as he possibly can be, and if he is, then yeah, I think he will absolutely live up to the hype.
And there's still a few question marks just surrounding the entire offense with there being a new quarterback. You just never know how everything's going to fit together exactly when you're bringing in a new quarterback.
Sure.
Switching gears a little bit to basketball. Actually, let's stick with football for just a sec because I'll just throw this into the news. The pronunciation guide for the Mizzou football team has been released. And if I can pull it up here. Who were some of the people that we were questioning how to pronounce their name?
Well, one was Tyree Gillespie, but you told me that his name, unfortunately, is not in the media guide, pronunciation guide.
Yeah, actually,
or only his first name
is,
which is where is not in question.
Yeah. So I guess we should just go with the most common.
It must be
pronunciation.
obvious. So Gillespie.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just gonna be final going forward.
Who else have we talked about? It's definitely the beginning syllable for Mr. Byers is like UH.
Okay.
So Akil.
Akil.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a kale.
No.
Okay.
Akil.
Gotcha. What about Fadele?
Yeah, you got that.
Is that
Perfect.
right? Okay.
Here's one for you. Nico Hay.
Hey, that's definitely one that I was we brought him up last week about a freshman who has a pretty good chance to avoid the red shirt, maybe even contribute a little bit at tight end this year. I did not know how to say his last name, so that is good to know.
And I think we got this one down, obviously. Okuebunam. Okuebunam.
Okay. What about Cale Garrett?
Cale Garrett, not listed,
Okay.
shockingly.
Okay. So
Uh,
we'll never know on that one.
last one that looks interesting, Trevor Wallace Sims.
Okay.
It's Vour, so I've pronounced it Vour, but it's Trevor
Okay.
moving forward.
Gotcha. Those are all great things to know.
We'll see how many times we still mess those up through the course of the season. All right, now switching gears away from football, Caleb Love, you may have heard of him, prize recruit in the 2020 class out of St. Louis, has set dates for his official visits, and Missouri is first up September 7th and 8th that weekend when they are hosting West Virginia in football. Then he goes to Indiana, North Carolina, and Kansas rounds it out. That last visit to Kansas is October 12th and 13th.
So the immediate significance of this is that recently Caleb Love named a top 6, and he's only taking 5 visits. So that means that Arizona is the one school that he's not taking an official visit to. So
I'm
certainly,
missing a visit here.
yeah, you are. But it certainly seems that Arizona's probably out of the picture at this point, especially considering he very could have easily just said, I've been to Mizzou 100 times. I don't need to take an official. I'll
Right.
use an official for Arizona. He didn't even do that. So it looks like he's got a pretty final top 5 here, and Mizzou is included in that. So I still think that Caleb Love is an extreme long shot to land at Mizzou, but it definitely seems that if things might be trending in our favor a little bit, at least a little bit better than they were. I think there's been a lot of reports that Konzo Martin is recruiting him harder than anybody. I think they have a really good relationship, and it would be pretty hard not to have a good relationship with Konzo. Obviously, a super down-to-earth, genuine guy. So I still think that Missouri there is a shot to land Caleb Love. And honestly, probably like 2 weeks ago, I probably would have told you there's zero chance. Just forget it. So I guess that's better than nothing.
Yeah, Louisville was the one that I missed. That's right before Kansas.
Yeah.
Mizzou going first, I don't know if you can read too much into that, but I think I would probably, I don't know. It's kind of a double-edged sword. If you're last, then you run the risk of him committing on a visit. However, with all of these visits planned, he's most likely not going to commit the first place he visits.
Yeah.
If Mizzou was third and still seeing North Carolina and Kansas left at the end, I still don't think he'll commit early. But if Missouri was third, then it was like, hey, maybe you can get him to commit without, like, before he leaves and
Right.
goes on these other visits. Maybe he'll cancel a couple visits, which we've seen with lots of recruits in football and basketball over the years.
Right.
But the thing that we will have to hope for as Mizzou fans is that he does take all of his visits and finishes everything out, and then maybe takes some time to reflect on it before committing.
Mm-hmm. And this is like a really probably pretty insignificant thing in these official visits, but it may play a role. I don't know what Caleb is looking for on his visits, but all of these schools listed here, Mizzou, Indiana, Louisville, North Carolina, and Kansas, none of those schools are football schools, and this is football. It's going to be football season when Caleb Love is visiting. Mizzou is playing a Power 5 opponent. Hopefully the stadium's going to look very hopefully full when West Virginia is in town for the visit. So maybe Caleb will, be impressed by the Mizzou fandom.
He may be impressed by us because we'll be there.
He will be impressed by us most definitely. We'll make sure we give him a little plug for Mizzou when we're there. We'll get to talk to him probably.
I'd give him a T-shirt. I'd give him a Missouri Sports Podcast T-shirt, but then that might be illegal and get Missouri into recruiting trouble.
Sure, yeah, don't do that. But anyways, none of these schools is probably going to blow him away as far as like the fandom that they bring out for the football games that he may be going to. Also, it's before basketball season starts, so he won't get to he's probably been to Kansas basketball game before, but anyway, so hopefully Mizzou.
Yeah, he's not going to get to go to a Duke North Carolina game. In Chapel Hill.
That's right. So hopefully Mizzou really rolls out the red carpet. I think all the students are gonna, hopefully make their banners and really make them feel welcome.
Oh yeah, they really love making those banners for recruits. Next item up, I don't know if you guys heard, but Team Cameron won and is, or they are, I'm not sure how to say this. We are the 7-on-7 draft champions for the Missouri Sports Podcast. So we ended up with 50 votes based on the teams, the 7-on-7 teams that we drafted out of the Mizzou roster. And Team Cameron took home first place with 60% of the vote.
Congratulations. It's well earned.
I will say there were a lot of doubters, especially two people in this room right now. And I knew with the leadership on the team and that chip on their shoulder, we would come out victorious, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. How does it feel?
It feels pretty good. Producer Cameron did bring in his copy of NFL Street Volume 2, so I am going to try to put that into the old GameCube and see if I can create some players. I am not going to let the dream die of us getting to actually face off with our squads in NFL Street.
Yeah, we're going to make it happen. Please don't let your bias infiltrate how you rate the players.
I would never.
Okay.
All right. I think that's all I have for news unless I missed something. You got anything?
That's it.
Okay. So before we preview the Mizzou season, this might sound strange, but we are going to actually, for about 30 seconds, preview the Nebraska Cornhuskers because our very own producer Cameron, who's back with us for episode 51, he had to make it at least 2 episodes in a row. He is a Nebraska fan. We know it's unfortunate, but we like to give him a hard time for it. But we really want to know what he thinks about this year's team, and we're going to give our preview or our projection for the record and see if maybe we can get some side bets going or something like that. So first, producer Cameron, let us know really how you feel about this team for this season.
Yeah, give us your plug. Really make them sound good.
Because they are a top 25 preseason team.
Yes, they are.
Which is cool, but also a little bit, I don't know if they deserve it. But they ended the season playing well last year, even though they still didn't end with a great record. They held their own against some really good teams. So that's a good sign going forward with Coach Frost at the helm. But this year, if I had to be reasonable, well, maybe a little reasonable, 8-4 would be my prediction.
Okay.
As far as I could go 9-3, but I think 8-4 is more realistic.
Wow, 9-3. Okay.
That'd be quite the turnaround.
Yeah.
From last year. They
Kyle,
went 4-8 last year.
Yeah. Let me run you through their schedule real quick.
Okay.
First game is, it says USA.
South Alabama.
Okay.
Wow. They're
taking on the national team. All right. South Alabama or USA.
Legitimately confused. You were like...
Then at Colorado, Northern Illinois, at Illinois, home against Ohio State, home against Northwestern, at Minnesota, home against Indiana, at Purdue. Sorry, my dad's calling me. Hello? We're recording a podcast.
How's your dad?
Obviously, it was very important. He said, call me back later.
Okay.
Uh,
I think Purdue was the last one you said?
At Purdue, home against Wisconsin, at Maryland, home against Iowa. So they avoid having this have the kids wave at them, which, at
True.
Iowa.
That could really break your spirit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna predict 7-7. You just listed off a ton of just kind of middling, random Big Ten schools that I know absolutely nothing about.
Yeah.
So some of them might be kind of good, and some of them might not be. I really don't know anything about them, so I'll just go with this. Is this an even 7-7?
Okay, how's this sound? They beat USA.
Okay.
Do they win at Colorado?
I think they go into the I looked at their schedule. I think they go into Ohio State 4-0.
Wow. So
Yeah,
South,
I would say so.
But the
South
Colorado
Alabama,
game,
Colorado,
They always
Northern
have
Illinois,
issues with
Illinois.
Colorado.
Okay.
Also,
they lost to Colorado
there's
last
only
year.
12 games, not 14.
7-7.
Oh my god. What did you say? 8-4?
So 7-5 or 5-7. Which one do you want? Let's just go through it real quick. They're going to lose to Ohio State at home.
Probably.
Yes. 4-1.
Northwestern at home.
Loss.
Yeah.
Northwestern
Lost. I agree.
loss.
4-2. At Minnesota.
See, this is what I'm talking about. It's like any of these could go any
At
either way.
Minnesota and at Purdue, I think they'll win
split.
one. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. So 5-2. They beat Indiana at home.
Sure.
6-3 because we got to give them that loss. Then home against Wisconsin.
No.
Loss. 6-4. At Maryland.
They'll win that.
Yeah. 7-4. Home against Iowa.
They'll lose.
I think they'll win either
7-5.
the Wisconsin or Iowa game.
You think they'll beat Wisconsin?
Or Iowa.
Kyle and I completely agree at 7-5.
8-4 it is.
And
Okay, but can we talk about the other thing that you said to us the other day, that you think they're going to have more wins than the Cleveland Browns?
That was not a real statement. I was just trying to get Cameron.
Oh, now you're
more
walking
up.
yourself. Okay. All right.
walk it back?
Walk it back. Okay.
Yeah, we did make a side bet on the NFL season. Cameron said the Cleveland Browns are going to win more than 8.5 games. And I said, disagree. I'll take the under for 20 credits or units or dollars, whatever you want to classify that.
Oh, we're really going to have to follow that one.
Yeah. I think they'll win exactly 8 games. And I also think Nebraska will win fewer with 7.
I agree.
Yeah, I really didn't think Nebraska was going to win more than Cleveland,
Okay.
since
I
they're
hope
going to
not.
have 10 or something.
Okay, last thing on Nebraska. Are they deserving? Will they be in the top 25 at the end of the year?
At 8-4, I don't know.
Is that 7-5?
Depends on
Probably
who
not.
they beat.
Okay.
Well, if they win, the main difference we have is you have them winning one of Wisconsin or Iowa at home,
Yeah.
which they're right now ranked 19th and 20th.
And most likely they would probably both be ranked by the end of the season. You never know, but
Probably an 8-4 Nebraska is ranked
Maybe.
in the 20.
If they beat Nebraska. If they beat themselves. If they beat
If
Wisconsin.
they beat themselves, they're definitely going to be 7-5.
All right. Well, we can move on so we don't lose all our viewers or listeners, but this is what makes football fun.
Yep.
thank you.
Making fun of Nebraska.
Yep.
All right. So before I just said this, but before we get into the schedule preview, the other thing that Missouri released is the new updated record book, which is always fun for me because I like to see the current players that have a shot at climbing the ranks. And so I'm going to throw some out at you, Kyle,
Okay.
and see if you think that they'll reach certain milestones.
Okay.
Let's start it out with Tucker McCann. Tucker McCann has made in his career 45 field goals. That's good for 4th all-time in Mizzou history. He needs 7 made field goals to get 3rd, which is currently held by Grant Russell. He needs 14 made field goals to get second with Jeff Wolfert. He needs 21 made field goals this year to be tied for first with Andrew Baggett.
He'll be in second at the end of this year.
He'll be in second. Producer Cameron, could you do me a huge favor?
Huge
favor. And look up how many field goals Tucker McCann made last season.
Sure.
So I think he'll be in first.
You think he'll get over 21?
I think. Does that make sense?
That
He's at
seems-
45 all time.
That would be almost
a-
half of his total allotment through 3 years.
Yeah.
But
It's probably safer to say he'll get second.
and this year we're going to be even better in the red zone because Alberto.
True. And the running game, not going to stall out as much.
Right.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You said
So-
last year?
Yeah.
24 field goals.
First place it is.
All right. Book it.
Okay. Now, the other thing that Tucker McCann is high on the list for is points scored all time. He is fourth. He is 8 points away from third, which is currently held by Brad Smith. 79 points away from second, Andrew Baggett. 86 points away from first, Jeff Wolfert. Now, this is a no-brainer because in 2017, he scored 96 points. In 2018, he scored 123 points. So even if he just repeats 2017, he's in first place all by himself.
And that's all-time most points scored by any player ever.
You got it.
Wow. That is... I didn't even think about, like, what you were about to say
Yeah.
being, like, all players. Like,
Yeah.
the first player you listed was
Brad Smith. in
Brad
third.
Smith. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's not a kicker.
Yeah, because all those rushing touchdowns.
Yes.
So
Cool.
a
That's very
quarterback, now I'm going to look like an idiot if I'm wrong here, but I'm 99% sure that a quarterback does not get credit for points on the passing touchdowns that they throw. It's only the person that scores the touchdown by entering the end zone.
Yes.
Yeah, so Brad Smith with all those rushing touchdowns and a couple 2-point conversions got him way up there on that list. So Tucker McCann, arguably the greatest field goal kicker in the history of Missouri.
Greatest Mizzou player ever.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
That's what I should have said. It would have been funnier. Are you okay with calling Tucker McCann the greatest field goal kicker in Mizzou history?
We'll see how the year goes.
Well, I'm saying if he ends up first place. In
Well,
both of
then,
those.
yes.
Okay. All right. Who do you want next? Jonathan Johnson, Alberto, or Larry Roundtree?
Give me JJ.
Jonathan Johnson is currently at 1,896 receiving yards. He needs 419 yards to reach top 5 and knock out Jeremy Maclin. He needs 882 yards to tie first place, which is Denario Alexander. Last year, I should have had all this ready. Last year, he had 737 receiving yards. The year before that, 724. He needs 882.
All right. I think he will end up around the 600 mark. Just because I don't think they're going to be throwing the ball as much this year, and I think Jalen Knox is going to take a pretty significant step forward.
Don't know what Jonathan Nance is going to do.
Right. Yeah, I think they've got more options this year, and they're going to throw less. So I think Jonathan Johnson will probably be in the 500 to 600 yard range.
Yeah, so solidly in the top 5, but
Definitely.
not really getting that close to Denario Alexander at number 1.
Yep.
But solidly in the top 5. Receptions for Jonathan Johnson. Career, he's at 124. He is 23 receptions away from the top 10 and 64 receptions away from the top 5, where he would be tied with TJ Moe. Last year, he caught 59 passes. Year before that, 41. Any chance he gets 64 this year to get to the top 5?
Sure. Yeah, there's a chance, definitely. I think that, just pure speculation on my part, that the way they'll use Jonathan Johnson, I think he'll probably run more intermediate routes maybe this year, less long ball type stuff, so maybe less yards, more receptions. So I think that he could potentially eclipse the 64 or whatever it was, 60 something.
64.
I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't, but
That'd be a pretty awesome career for Jonathan Johnson to be top 5 in all-time receiving yards and receptions.
I feel like he's done it so quietly. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just because we haven't been that great in the last few years. But
and people, I mean, us included, we point out the drops a lot.
True. Yeah, he's a little bit of a liability on punt return and some of those short, quick passes for sure. But he's had a really awesome career for sure.
All right, Alberto or Larry Roundtree?
Whichever one producer Cameron has ready. You got Larry Roundtree ready?
Yeah.
All right. Larry Roundtree is at 1,919 yards, rushing yards for his career. He needs 438 to be top 10, right behind Ish Witter. 852 to be top 5 with Henry Josie. And just to show you how far away number 1 is, he would need 2,370 yards to be tied with Brad Smith for all-time rushing yards.
That is just absolutely crazy. That he's that far in first, and he was a quarterback.
Yeah. Producer Cameron, do you have Larry Roundtree's rushing yardage from last year?
Well, I can't tell if this is his all-purpose yards. 1,216.
I would expect Larry Roundtree to have a similar season to last year. I think he's still going to be the feature back, but I think Kelly Bryant is going to be running the ball more. I think Tyler Beatty is obviously going to be involved, maybe more involved than last year, except they might try to involve Tyler Beatty in the passing game more, maybe even Larry Roundtree too. So I think Larry Roundtree will probably have a very similar year to last year, considering he stays healthy all year, which he's stayed amazingly healthy his whole career. I don't know that he's really missed any time at all.
Did you say 1,216?
Yeah,
that's rushing yards. You were right. So
yeah, I'll put him around the 1,000 mark probably.
Okay, then the real question is, does he come back for a senior year and actually have a legitimate shot at that number 1 spot?
I'll say yes.
I'm going to say hard no. I'm going to say he is gone to the NFL. Whether he gets drafted or goes undrafted, I think he's long gone.
Well, Crockett has shown that you don't have to get drafted or even have that like amazing of a college career to have a shot at a starting spot in the NFL. It just kind of depends on your situation. So Larry Roundtree may decide that that's a good idea. So you could be right.
Then I do want to talk touchdowns for Larry Roundtree. He's at 17 career rushing touchdowns. He only needs 4 touchdowns to be top 10, 11 to be top 5, and 28 to be tied for first with Brad Smith. So last year he had 11 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It'd probably be, I will guess he'll have 13. So
right up there in the top 5.
Yep.
And again, comes back for a second season. That's pushing it. Yardage is a lot more doable than touchdowns for that number 1 spot. Senior season. All right, so that leaves us with Albert O. And it's really just touchdowns for him. He hasn't been a high yardage receiver. He has 17 career receiving touchdowns, and 11 of those came from his freshman year, 6 from last season. He's 2 away from the top 5, 6 away from second place, and 14 touchdowns away from tying Chase Kaufman for number 1.
I don't think he's going to get there, but I definitely think that he could have 8 to 10 for sure. I think last year, obviously, he left a little bit early with his injury, but I mean, defenses know who he is now. You know, after scoring 11 touchdowns your freshman year, people are going to figure out who you are and how to stop you. You've become part of the game plan. So that clearly happened last year. But yeah, he had like 3 touchdowns against Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he will have that kind of numbers in a single game again. It's just going to be interesting to see how they use him in the new offense. But I'll put him in the 8 or 9 touchdown range, which would still be great.
Solidly in second place.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say that he puts up an insane season, crazy efficiency, not a lot of catches, but a ton of touchdowns. I'm going to say he ties Denario Alexander for most receiving touchdowns in a season at 14 and exactly what he needs to be tied with Chase Kaufman for first all time.
That'd be cool.
And then he's going to be like a 10th overall draft pick.
Wow. It's so awesome to see how many just outstanding individual performers Mizzou has right now, even though they may, not have as many wins as they would have liked to have in the last 2 or 3 years, but they have some serious talent on their team. And obviously having Drew Lock and having the kind of offense that we've run the last, 2 to 4 years really helps kind of pad some of those numbers for sure, but still takes an incredible talent to do what some of these guys have done. So it's just really, it's fun to see them achieve, some of these goals and records that they're putting up.
Yeah, but it's not like they've been insanely heavy in one aspect of offense. I mean,
Right.
we're talking about
We're
a
several
running
guys.
back and 2 receivers who
Right.
were knocking on the door of some historic lists for Mizzou history. So that, I mean, they've been balanced. I mean, even going all the way back to when Chase Daniel was quarterback, they still had a pretty potent running game. I remember Tony Temple, Derek Washington. So I think I saw something recently that like 2015 was the only season in the last 9 years or something that Missouri didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. So they've been incredibly balanced for how, even though you think of them for the last 10 years as being a spread, high-powered throwing offense.
Yeah, Larry Roundtree has really been especially a treat to watch just because I think he's been a different kind of back than we're used to seeing. I think we've had so many of those kind of speedsters, scat back type running backs in the last 5 to 10 years at Mizzou. And I just think Larry Roundtree kind of embodies the Barry Odom attitude, just running north and south, just outman you. And I really, it's been so awesome to see how good Larry Roundtree's been at his time at Mizzou.
Yeah, he is just one of the most fun to watch players that they've had in a while. All right, so everybody's been waiting for it, and now it is time to preview the Missouri schedule. Last season, they finished the year 8-5. 8-5 including the bowl game, so we'll just call it 8-4 for our purposes of the regular season preview. We both predicted this time last year that they would be 9-3. Obviously, we like to be a little bit optimistic, but also realistic. And where we messed up was the Kentucky game. All we needed was to flip that one, and then we were pretty much spot on with our predictions. And if I might add, I threw out some score predictions. Why, I don't know. But I was pretty close on a couple of them. I said Missouri would beat UT Martin 48-17. The final score was 51-14. I had Missouri beating Purdue by 3 in a high-scoring game. It was higher scoring than I thought, but they did win by 3. And then the Georgia game, I predicted a loss 41-31, and the final score was 43-29. So I was pretty close on a few of those.
You should go to Vegas.
Definitely will not do that. But yeah, we were really close. We both wanted that 9th win to come against Kentucky. We also had you were actually more accurate because you had them losing to South Carolina and beating Florida, and I had the opposite. But both ended up really close to what actually happened. And if that Kentucky game, man, that's a shame that they lost that one and kept us from getting our record prediction perfect.
Yeah, we'll talk about Kentucky a little bit later, but that was one of the most painful experiences of my sports life for sure.
So this season, the S&P Plus, which is Bill Connolly's, what would you call it?
Analytics formula.
And prediction formula, has Missouri squarely at 8 wins, 8.1 wins technically, but we'll call it 8 wins. So repeating their performance from last year. I guess we can just kind of take it one game at a time real quick and just, obviously we'll do more in-depth previews before each game. So we'll just kind of get our thoughts off the top and quickly predict if we think that Missouri will win or lose. If I'm not going to hold you to it, so if we get to the Ole Miss game in October and we're predicting it and you predict opposite from now, you don't have to stick to what you say now.
Thank you.
But we'll start with Wyoming, who last season was 6-6, and Missouri won at home 40-13. I think Missouri will win again, even though it's at Wyoming.
Yeah. I don't know that the location's going to play into it that much. I think just because I think if this game was like in the middle of the year, I don't think we'd be that worried about it. But just because it's the first game of the year, Barry Odom teams have kind of started slow in his career, including bowl games, where it just seems like anytime we have an extended break of any kind, we come back really slow and look confused. So obviously there's a little bit of concern there. Just because of like past occurrences, but I don't think Missouri will have any problem with Wyoming. I think they will win easily.
All right, so 1-0 coming back home to play West Virginia. We've mentioned a few times now we have tickets to attend that game, so that'll be really fun. West Virginia last season was 8-4. They've got a new starting quarterback. Will Grier has moved on, and they have a new head coach. Dana Holgorsen is now the coach at Houston. So they've got a transfer quarterback from Oklahoma who has taken over the top spot, but they lose their top 4 receivers, but they have their top 2 running backs returning. So a lot of people will have a lot of question marks about this West Virginia team, how they'll react to a new coach and all that stuff. They had quite a few transfers. But the S&P Plus, I looked it up earlier, has them at about 6 wins this year.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable because there's so many question marks. Head coach Neil Brown coming from Troy, which is ironic because Mizzou plays Troy later this year. But actually, news came out just today that West Virginia, one of their assumably starting linebackers, Vandarius Cowan, is going to be suspended for the first 4 games of the year due to some kind of academics thing. So, again, just another question mark, just another unknown about West Virginia.
Right.
Which in the past, I'm again going to bring up some things of Missouri past. Maybe the Georgia game a few years ago when Todd Gurley got hurt, and I think it was Sony Michel or whoever was Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb was his backup. Comes in and runs on us for 300 yards. So I don't want to assume that this is just a victory because there's unknowns and there's maybe inexperienced players. Because we've seen in the past that doesn't matter when Missouri plays against inexperienced players because they just go off on us. So I'm going to pencil this in as a win. I think Missouri should win with all of these unknowns, and they're at home. But I'm not really going to be surprised at any outcome here.
Yeah, I think that Missouri's offense is going to win them a lot of games just because they'll be able to control the tempo, control the opposition's opportunities to score. Because I think the running game that Missouri is going to deploy this year will just control the ball so much and just tire defenses out. And I think the offense is going to kind of carry them through a few wins basically by making it easier on the defense. We saw a few seasons ago where Missouri's offense literally made it harder for the defense. Even when the offense was scoring points, they were still making it harder for the defense.
Because they were they would score so fast.
They would either score or go 3 and out in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, so the defense is exhausted after the first quarter.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see the opposite of that this year, and I think it's really going to help the defense.
Yeah.
So I've got that as a win for Missouri, and I think it's going to be probably 2 touchdowns plus margin of victory. Then our 2-0 Tigers stay home to play SEMO, and that'll be a win.
That's a win.
And then stay home to play South Carolina. And I just want to beat South Carolina.
I know.
It's so frustrating to keep losing to them when I legitimately think for many years now Missouri has had a better team.
Yeah, I agree. Kentucky was, like I said, one of the most painful things I've ever watched in my life last year. But in any normal season ever, that South Carolina game last year would have been the most painful thing I've ever seen. If you recall, that was the game we played at South Carolina.
Missouri was dominating.
Seemed like we were in total cruise control, and then a monsoon out of nowhere happens. And then there was the play after the break. We come back.
There was a rain delay.
There was a massive delay, and so everybody gets cold. So we come back. Demary Crockett has a huge touchdown run where he breaks away, but his foot gets really close to the sideline, and I still think to this day that he was in bounds the whole time. I feel like I could see green in between his foot and the sideline, but they, for whatever reason, call him out of bounds. It comes back, and then Missouri ends up punting that drive.
Yeah.
So that was just devastating, and then at the end of the game, Tucker McCann nails a 57-yard field goal to take a 3-point lead with, probably less than 2 minutes to go in the game, and South Carolina drives down the field and wins. So that was excruciating.
Depressing.
Yes, it really was. But it just summed up how Missouri has played against South Carolina. And 2 years ago, we started the game off really good against them at home, and then they had the kickoff return from Deebo Samuel, and then the game just flipped, and we just were completely dominated from that point on in the game. So, South Carolina's been really pesky, really frustrating for Mizzou in its time in the SEC. I think this year is the year that we break the trend. I think we win and go to 4-0.
So that's what I said last year, and it did not come to fruition. S&P Plus has South Carolina winning 6 games. That means they're worse than Missouri, according to them. But S&P Plus is really high on Missouri. Maybe that's some Bill C bias, but I don't think so.
Stats don't lie.
True.
Numbers don't lie.
It'd be quite a conspiracy theory if he created this whole analytical format just to he picked and chose ways that would make Missouri appear better than they actually are.
I'm pretty sure 8 wins is very reasonable for Missouri.
Yeah. Man, I want to predict a win against South Carolina. It did not work out for me last year, but maybe the second time will be the charm. I'm with you. Let's go 4-0 and keep it rolling against Troy at home.
Troy has a history of knocking teams off at home. In fact, I believe they beat Missouri at one point in its history, probably in the last 10 or 15 years. They beat LSU at home a few years ago. So they've definitely they've been here before. They've been the underdog in a hostile environment.
Literally, they've been to Columbia before.
They literally have, and were successful. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I would call this a trap game, but this is definitely a team that we're not going to steamroll SEMO or something. Yeah. That'll probably come back to haunt me when we lose a SEMO.
No, that's not going to happen.
But, and they've got a new head coach. So obviously Neil Brown moved on to West Virginia. He was very successful at Troy. They've been very good the last few years. So
obviously for him to get that job.
Right. So some of those players I think actually went with him to West Virginia, but I'm sure that the foundation of that team is still there. So I think it's possible that they could be dangerous this year. I think Missouri wins, but I'm gonna predict that it'll be close.
I'm gonna predict a win as well, which means Missouri would be 5-0 and 1-0 in the SEC when they host Ole Miss. And if you can remember all the way back to 2013, Missouri played at Ole Miss last time these two matched up and beat them pretty handily. James Franklin had a heck of a game, and that kind of was a really big test that season and kind of showed the college football world that Missouri could play with anybody that season.
Yeah, that was such a fun season, but really beat up on all the kind of stereotypical SEC programs. And so you're right. Missouri definitely made a statement that year. Ole Miss is a team that, like some of those SEC West teams, we just don't play them very often. Right. So I feel like it's even more meaningful whenever you're able to get a win because you're not going to play them again for a while. Yeah. So in Ole Miss, they were really dangerous on offense at times last year. I think they have the quarterback who's returning, I think. And they have a returning coach who I think is his first year last year. So they definitely have some things to build on. They have some returning players in key spots. I think Missouri still wins this game. But the defense is going to have to show up. Ole Miss's offense could be very dangerous.
I feel like the only analysis we're going to be able to give about this game at this point is the most generic. There's players on these teams and they will really try hard to win. So I have nothing to add to any Ole Miss analysis. By the time it gets to October 12th, though, we'll have a lot more information about Ole Miss to let you guys know. All right, so Missouri is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-0. Now they've got a road trip. We're going at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, they have a ton of home games. I just realized that. They're like 5 in a row.
But then they go at Vanderbilt, at Kentucky, at Georgia. Started off with at Vanderbilt. I'm going to go ahead and pencil this in as a win. I think Vanderbilt has had some opportunities to put together good seasons the last few years. This is not going to be one of them. They're going to be back down at the bottom of the SEC East. Not even Tennessee will keep them from doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to probably have to agree with you. I still think playing at Vanderbilt is... And it's a tough game probably to get up for. You're playing an SEC game, but it feels like you're playing at like a local Tennessee high school, probably. But Vanderbilt's got some good players. I mean, they've got Keyshawn Vaughn, who's their running back, and I think he honestly might be one of the best running backs in the SEC, if not the best. I think if he played for Alabama or Georgia, he'd probably be All-American. But he plays for Vanderbilt, but he's still very dangerous. Had a great game against us last year. Honestly, we barely escaped the Vanderbilt game with a win last year. So
yeah, that one was at home, and it was still scary.
Right. So this is definitely, and it was like one of those 11 a.m. games.
Yeah.
It was just like, it looked like we were half asleep for the first half of the game. So definitely not a game to completely write off as a win. But I think we do win.
As we literally write a W.
We will literally write this off
papers.
as a win, but don't write it off as a win just yet. I think Derek Mason, I don't like to speculate necessarily on people's livelihoods, but
don't talk about a man's
I
job.
definitely think he's probably not going to be coaching at Vanderbilt much longer. They got to turn something around.
So S&P Plus has him at 5 wins this year. Is that low enough for him to be gone, you think?
Probably.
I think so too. All right, so now, unbelievably, Missouri has come out of nowhere to be 7-0, and now we get the rematch at Kentucky from the heartbreaking loss last season.
Yeah, I mean, if Missouri's coming in this game 7-0, I mean, they're very possibly a top 10 team at this point, ranked.
Haven't played a lot of
not
people
saying
yet.
they are a top 10 program at this point, but they could be ranked top 10 at this point if they're 7-0. But this Kentucky game, man, it's kind of sticky. We haven't played well against Kentucky really ever at any point in the SEC except for maybe the 2013 year. I'm kind of worried that the ghosts of our past will haunt us in this game. It's at Kentucky. I think Kentucky's defense is good. They did lose Benny Snell and Josh Allen to the NFL, but I don't know, man. I think I'm going to predict a loss in this one.
I'm going to go ahead and predict a win, even though I know I would bet a lot of money that Missouri is not going to be 8-0 heading into the Georgia game.
They're going to stumble somewhere.
Yeah, there's going to be a loss in there somewhere, even though we can't really pinpoint it.
I agree.
I honestly feel like home against South Carolina is more of a toss-up than at Kentucky. I think Kentucky will be down this year. They will definitely not be fighting for the top of the SEC East. Going on the road is always difficult in conference, but I really think that they'll pull this one off, which means I probably should have put South Carolina as a loss, but we'll just be really optimistic and say we'll be 8-0 going into the Georgia game. And like you said, ranked like in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine Georgia, I'm assuming, will probably be undefeated at this point. What if Missouri and Georgia are like a top 5 matchup at this point?
Well, that's
both teams undefeated.
I mean, so they're receiving votes. Missouri is receiving votes in the polls right now. How many wins would it take? I mean, you think after beating let's say they beat beating West Virginia by 2 touchdowns, does that get them into that top 25, you think?
Yeah.
So then add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 wins after that. How high could they get before that Georgia game? You think that? I'm thinking
probably the 8 to 10 is probably about as high as they could get.
Yeah. So let's say that it's number 10 Missouri going on the road to play number
3 or 4 probably.
Yeah.
Georgia.
I mean, if Alabama or Clemson stumbles, they could be a top 2 team.
Yeah. Yeah, that could potentially be very exciting, and I also think Missouri knows that it could like culminate to this point in the season, so I don't want them to dwell on it too much because obviously that's like, 70% of their season that they have to win to get to this point.
Right.
But this could potentially be a massive, massive game. I don't see Missouri winning. I don't know how they could win this game, honestly. Georgia's going to be so good on the road. I see like a 2% chance that Missouri could pull this off, but
Yeah, it was as easy for me to put an L on this one as it was for me to put a W next to SEMO.
I agree.
It's really unfortunate, but you don't have to go back that far to see Missouri winning some of these really huge games, but until they do it again, it just
Georgia's just become truly like a perennial power,
Yeah.
and they're really at the height of what they've been right now. So I don't see that going away for a little while at least.
All right, so Missouri loses to Georgia. Their dreams of going to the national championship are probably over, but they have to bounce back quickly because they're hosting preseason number 8 Florida Gators.
This is probably going to be the toughest game on the schedule for me to pick because I really think that Missouri will win this game. For some reason, there's just nothing that scares me about Florida. Felipe Franks does not scare me at all. It seems like we always seem to have our way with them somehow, no matter where we play.
It ends up being some kind of crazy game with a bunch of turnovers and special teams plays.
And the Florida players always make some weird excuse like that they couldn't get up for the game, even though they've lost the game like 7 times in a row to Missouri. So I am going to predict a win for Missouri in this game.
All right, this is getting eerily similar to last season when the only games that we got wrong were South Carolina and Florida, because I feel like South Carolina is going to beat Missouri, and I feel like Missouri's got a good chance to beat Florida, just like you said. But I'm going to predict a loss just because I don't really know. I totally get what you're saying, but at some point, Florida is just supposed to be a better team.
Right.
And when will they show that in a matchup against Missouri?
Yeah.
It's been a while, but I think that coming on the road, this could be a really huge game for them. I mean, they could be looking at a situation where if they beat Georgia, they're the front runners now for the SEC East. So.
Yeah, this game could definitely impact the SEC East standings, definitely.
And who gets in the SEC championship game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so a more fun one to talk about, I think, is a home game against Tennessee. And I didn't even have to ask you what you thought, and I penciled us both in for W's on that one.
Yeah, man, I love to make fun of Tennessee. I really can't stand them. I think that Tennessee has a lot of hype. They do every year. I just don't see them being that competitive again this year. I don't know that Jeremy Pruitt is ever going to be successful at Tennessee. I think it's a tough place to be successful sometimes. I mean, the fan base, man, is ruthless, and I don't know. I don't see Jeremy Pruitt being there very long. That I could definitely be wrong. Tennessee could end up being super good this year. Maybe not super good, but I think they will be better. But
I mean, I could see him finding some success. Maybe getting to 7 wins this year, going to a bowl game, and then building on that for the future. And then maybe next year we're having a different conversation. Or they surprise a few people and end up with 8 wins, and they're ready to compete now. But I see more of it as a gradual thing. The fans are just going to have to be patient.
Right, which doesn't happen
very
often.
Which could be Pruitt's demise. But if they get to 7 wins this year and go to a bowl game, I think they'll be on the right track.
It's
and
progress.
They will not make it easy for us to make fun of them maybe the next few years.
Yeah, they're gonna have to have reasonable expectations for sure, which may not happen, but yeah, I think that 6 to 7 win window is accurate for them, but I think Missouri beats them. The real question is who's going to be better this year, Tennessee or Nebraska?
Oh, okay.
Right,
maybe they'll play
each
other in a 6-6 bowl game.
That'd be amazing.
All right, so finishing off the regular season, Missouri goes to Little Rock, not Fayetteville, to play Arkansas. Technically still a road game. And seems like Missouri's done pretty well with Arkansas the last few years. Drew Lock had one of his best games against Arkansas. 2 years ago, they had a really big comeback win, one of the biggest comebacks in Missouri history.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Last year, they just completely destroyed Arkansas, like 38 to 0.
Nothing, yeah.
Jeez.
And it was super rainy, and the field was really wet.
And Arkansas could do nothing.
Yeah. Oh, man, they're awful. I still think Arkansas is going to be terrible. I think Chad Morris is not the answer for Arkansas. They're gonna be terrible again.
Probably not make a bowl game.
No.
I mean, if Yeah, they're probably looking at 4 or 5 wins. Maybe.
It's just so difficult to be mediocre in the SEC West. I mean, it's just so hard to gain any traction whatsoever. I mean, when you're in the SEC East, like, I don't know, a 2017 Missouri or something, I don't know, a team that was, had some potential. Missouri was still able to get some traction and to pick off some of those SEC East teams. But when you're in the West, man, it's just, if you're mediocre, you're not winning anything.
Right.
So I think Missouri will easily beat Arkansas again, which if I've been very optimistic in this little scenario here. I don't know that I really think Missouri is going to go 10-2, but I have picked them to go 10-2. That seems incredibly generous and would be one of the best seasons Missouri's had ever, probably, if they do what I've predicted them to do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I also have them going 10-2 when you go game by game.
Who do you have them losing to? Kentucky and Georgia?
No, Georgia and Florida.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Kentucky. I have them losing to Kentucky and Georgia.
Yeah. I should just change South Carolina to a loss and say 9-3.
Yeah,
because it's much more realistic. But I'm not going to do it.
Okay, don't do it.
I want the revenge against South Carolina, but
yeah, it's like I really do think 9-3 sounds right, but for some reason I can't put my finger on how it's going to go.
Yeah, losing to South Carolina seems like the obvious one to me, and then losing 2 of Kentucky, Georgia, and Florida.
Yeah, I mean, West Virginia could end up being better than we thought. Ole Miss could be better than we thought. Vanderbilt even could maybe sneak into the win column. I really don't know. Any one of and maybe Tennessee ends up being better than we thought. I don't know. And they've got the whole season to get to that point. So maybe they have time to figure out what they're doing. So
yeah, 10-2 definitely seems like an incredibly optimistic outlook.
Right.
Still, though, worst case scenario, if this team does not win 8 games, I would be pretty surprised and disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's really only, I don't know, a couple of games that I would be. I don't know what I'm saying.
8-4, worst case scenario.
Yeah, I think 7 wins is their floor,
and that would be disappointing.
That would be very disappointing. Yeah, but I don't think there's any way Barry Odom gets fired after this season. But no. I definitely think it's possible that if they have a poor season, his seat might be a little bit warm.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely don't think we're talking about Barry Odom coaching for his job next year.
Definitely not. And then you always do have the opportunity of a bowl win. I take that back. Missouri does not have that opportunity as of now. Do you have any idea, speaking of bowl games, when is that announcement going to be about the bowl ban?
I think it honestly could happen really any time in the next 3 to 4 weeks, which is kind of terrifying because the magnitude of that decision and how much
starting the season without
how
knowing.
Little I trust the NCAA to make a rational decision. It's terrifying considering how much it plays into every game.
Yeah, they have to overturn the bowl ban. I mean, that...
They have to, yeah. I agree with you. As a probably biased Missouri fan, I think it's outrageous, and I've thought that for ever since it's happened. I think they should be punished, but the punishments don't fit the crime.
Yeah, when I was looking at the record book and I saw the vacated wins from 2015 and 16, I think, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's... I guess that's kind of an imaginary punishment. It doesn't really do much.
Right.
Because even in the Missouri record books, they still show
you won the games. They played the games and they won. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get started on this because I'll go forever. But I mean, ultimately, the NCAA is punishing the players and the fans who had no involvement whatsoever with what happened, and it just is common sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you heard it here first. Missouri 10-2. If the bowl ban is overturned, going to a really nice bowl game. If Georgia slips up, maybe they're backing themselves into an SEC championship game, just like 2014.
I think even if Missouri goes 10-2, I still think Georgia probably finds a way to get to the SEC championship game.
Georgia's really good.
But I think that Missouri will go to a New Year's Six Bowl or whatever they call those, and probably end up playing like Michigan or something like that, which would be honestly a fantastic season.
Yeah, I'd love to see Missouri kind of in that same spot that Florida has been in the end of the season and bowl situation.
Yep.
All right, well, that's what we think about the entire season.
Yep.
It's going to be really exciting. I have not been this ready for football in quite a while. It seems like the anticipation for football season is always so much more than basketball because
nothing's happened in months.
We've been waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yeah. And then, football season gets going, and then basketball season just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it creeps up on you.
And it's a fun time of year. And producer Cameron always makes fun of me because I always think it's like the best time of the year. But
Kyle has about 3 or 4 best times, greatest times of the year.
That's definitely true. I'll just leave it at that. That's true. But I won't try to explain myself out of it. You guys are right. I mean, huge season. A lot of unknowns for Missouri too. I mean, Kelly Bryant. I mean, that's a pretty big piece of the puzzle right there. Yeah. So,
are we gonna have a watch party for that Wyoming game?
Probably, yeah. Let's do it.
We'll have to make that happen.
Yeah, next week we're previewing the first game of the season.
Here.
Next week.
I watched a bunch of highlight videos from last year today at work, and
it puts a smile on my face just to think about it. So, all right.
I think that's it for this episode.
I think that's it.
It was kind of a long one, I think. I'm not sure though. We established that we don't have any grasp of time.
Yeah, that's true.
While we're talking.
No, that's
about how we usually do it.
All right.
Perfect timing.
Well, you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. We're on Twitter at Missouri Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
And you can find me on Twitter at C_Alberto8. Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week.